Today, the aircraft carrier is the ultimate symbol of naval power. A floating city, it's a projection of strength that can strike anywhere in the world. These massive behemoths of steel and technology dominate the seas. But where did it all begin? Before the Nimitz-class carriers, before the mighty flat tops of World War II, there was a single ship that paved the way. A ship that started as something completely different. This is the story of the USS Langley, America's first aircraft carrier. A vessel that would lay the foundation for modern naval aviation, and yet has largely been forgotten. Welcome back, everyone, to another This Week in Aviation History right here on Aero Exploration. In this episode, we'll be exploring how one daring experiment of early aviation led to the commissioning of America's first aircraft carrier, the USS Langley. To understand Langley, we have to go back to a time when the very idea of launching an airplane from a ship was seen as madness. The early 20th century was an era of rapid innovation. The Wright brothers had barely proven that flight was possible. Yet militaries across the world were already asking themselves the next question: could these fragile machines be used in war? In 1910, a daredevil pilot, Eugene Ely, was the first to take off from a naval ship. 1 year later, he would pull something off even more daring, landing on one. Now, this was the first true aircraft carrier test, proving that planes and warships could work together. But there was a problem. The Navy didn't have a ship designed for this. Some of the earliest uses of aviation in the military was during World War I, when both the British and the US pushed the limits of flying anti-submarine patrols from shore-based seaplane units. But as the need to project power at sea grew, so did the ambition to launch and recover aircraft from a floating platform. When you fast forward to today, aircraft carriers are gigantic cities at sea, capable of projecting power around the globe. But this dominance wasn't always a given. The foundation for the modern aircraft carrier was laid on an unlikely experiment. So when we think of aircraft carrier names now, we think Midway, Nimitz, Enterprise. But before all that, there was the Langley, America's first aircraft carrier. So in that aftermath of World War I, naval strategists began to see the potential of shipborne aviation. Visionaries like Commander Kenneth Whiting, who once commanded the Navy's first aeronautical detachment in France, argued that a warship dedicated solely to aviation could transform naval warfare. He envisioned a vessel that would serve as both a testbed and a training ground for the future of naval aviation. Early on, there were some traditionalists who gave him some resistance and doubted the practical value of aviation at sea. But Whiting and like-minded officers pushed this idea forward. They pointed to successes of early experimentation. For instance, the British forces had launched wheeled aircraft off wooden platforms during World War I, thus demonstrating that the skies were no longer just the exclusive domain of land-based craft. Enter the USS Jupiter. Originally a U.S. coal-carrying vessel, Jupiter had no real military glory. But in 1920, the Navy saw an opportunity. Lattice-like girders were erected over the main deck to create hangar space below. It would also serve to support a travel lift for the aircraft from that hangar space to the flight deck. On March 20th, 1922, the converted vessel was commissioned as the USS Langley, CV No. 1. Named in honor of Samuel P. Langley, an aviation pioneer and former assistant professor at the U.S. Naval Academy. The ship had a modest 534-foot flight deck. It's crude by today's standards, but it became a proving ground for carrier aviation. Lieutenant Virgil Griffin made the Navy's first carrier takeoff on October 17, 1922. And soon after, the Langley's decks saw its first landings. Now, the challenges here were enormous. Pilots had to learn how to land on a moving ship with a makeshift flight deck, often under some perilous conditions. But Langley wasn't just an experiment. She was also a floating classroom. Every single landing, every takeoff was a lesson in the brand new science of carrier operations. Now, despite these humble beginnings and rough edges, the USS Langley quickly proved its worth. During fleet exercises in the mid-1920s, Langley pilots would hone the art of carrier operations, perfecting takeoffs, landings, and deck handling techniques that would shape the design of future aircraft carriers like the Lexington and the Saratoga. One of the most significant innovations developed aboard the Langley was the concept of a landing signal officer. This is a dedicated crew member who guides incoming aircraft with hand signals. This simple yet revolutionary idea ensured safer and more efficient deck operations, drastically reducing the time between sorties and paving the way for higher tempo operations of today's carrier battle groups. But by the 1930s, she was outdated. The Navy had bigger and better carriers, and the Langley was converted into an aircraft transport ship. She might not have been on the front lines anymore, but her story was far from over. By 1942, the Pacific had become a battleground, and the Langley was tasked with delivering desperately needed aircraft to Allied forces. But on February 27th, she was spotted by Japanese bombers. In a relentless attack, she was struck multiple times, set ablaze, and left for dead in the water. To prevent her from falling into enemy hands, her own crew made the heartbreaking decision to scuttle the ship. The first U.S. aircraft carrier was gone. The Langley story doesn't end at the bottom of the ocean. Every carrier today that projects America's power across the globe traces its roots back to the humble coal ship turned experimental testbed. Without Langley, there's no Enterprise, there's no Nimitz, there's no supercarriers. She was the spark that ignited a revolution in naval warfare. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the origins of naval aviation and the story of the USS Langley, please like this video, subscribe to Aero Exploration, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an episode of This Week in Aviation History.